Hello, hello, hello. I think my delay is pretty strong today, but we are here. We are here. Welcome, welcome. Um, man, there's a. So let's get into Robb's will real quick. I got some funny comments before things started about Robb's will, which. So what it really comes down to it. And I kind of go through things, and people are like, "Oh, Preston thinks it's cat," and that's not really the whole truth to who I think Robb's will is. I think like when I went through, I think when I first approached this years and years ago, I went through all of the characters in the book that could possibly be named, and no one is a good choice. Like no one is a good heir for Robb in the North. They're all really really bad choices. And the main reason is just that it's impossible to get someone that both the Riverlanders and the Northmen would support. Um, the Northerners are a bunch of like sexist idiots, and the who are probably only going to follow a strong male character, and the Riverlanders are um into lineage, and they have this really difficult to defend position, and it's just it's a really ridiculous situation. And by the way, hold on a second, just making sure my my thing is working here. I don't want to be talking to no one. So, and so the question is like, what was George R. R. Martin really thinking? And so when you go through the characters, the one that makes most sense to me is Catalan, because she can actually unite the Riverlands in the north, and then there's a whole section in that Storm of Swords chapter about the strength of women and things like this. The Robb's Will chapter is one of the most filler chapters that you're ever going to that you're ever going to read in a Song of Ice and Fire. Um, but logically speaking, if you actually say like, what's the function of the chapter? I think Jesse said it earlier, that the concept of legitimizing bastards is not introduced in A Song of Ice and Fire until that chapter. And so if you didn't have the Robb's Will chapter, because the Robb's Will chapter is also really stupid, like not only is like nobody a good choice, because like Benjen is lost and Robb knows he's lost, like Catalan's a woman, Arya's a woman, Sansa's a woman, Jon is in the Night's Watch and has no connection to the Riverlands. Like, you could pick, and then you could pick some random character that from like the Vale or something, but they're random, right? And so the but the and then later on in the story, like everything to do with Robb's will gets overcome by events. Like there's just so much war going on, and people are rallying behind Stannis and Rickon, and people are finding out that Rickon's still alive and maybe Bran's still alive. It gets overcome by events, and Arya reappears and things like this. But so really probably the function of the chapter was specifically to introduce the idea of legitimizing bastards, so at the end of A Storm of Swords, Jon can have a decision. And that's it. Like that's logically why it's there. And that Robb's will is actually just really stupid, and it was a forced like plot point that George R. R. Martin put in there, because had he just had Stannis introducing the idea that he could legitimize bastards like out of nowhere, everyone would be like, "What? This is contrived." And of course it's contrived. Like the whole thing is contrived. Like your whole story begins with a guy from the Night's Watch getting executed for abandoning the Night's Watch, and then you're going to throw in this plot point that no, it's actually really easy to leave the Night's Watch. You can leave the Night's Watch all the time, anytime you want, And so it probably really was something George R. R. Martin just introduced in order to have, so that he could introduce legitimizing bastards before Stannis offers the option to John later. But really, the only character that makes any sense at all is Catalan. There's just no one could possibly be it besides Catalan. But that that might be an accident. That might be by accident. So, um, I saw something else that I thought was kind of interesting before I get to the super chat. Did somebody say? Um, this is funny. Robb's will made the question of succession clear and uncontested. Yes. Um, Somebody mentioned Stoneheart and 2.0, which has become like fandom canon at this point. That somehow like there's going to be an event that um, brings all the Freys to one place, and then they're all going to get slaughtered by something that Lady Stoneheart is doing, and it's probably going to be like um, the Lannister wedding to the Freys coming up. And I guess but then there was something added on there that they were all going to become whites, and then you have like essentially a second other invasion, like starting in the Riverlands, and you don't even need one in the north because it's just going to be a bunch of fire whites, like raised after the Red Wedding or the Red Wedding 2.0. Um, okay, let's see. Now I got here. Sorry, this isn't about the will, but do you think an American thinks idea that werewolves propagate by having limbs grafted onto humanoids? Huh. That's the first time I've heard that idea. So I know that an American thinks is also really into Thousand Worlds. So I'm wondering if this idea comes from. Oh, now I'm getting where it's coming from. So I think what an American thinks is thinking of is in A Song for Leah, which is I'm sure I've talked about this a million times, but I'm going to be a broken record for anybody that doesn't know here. Lyanna Stark, Lyanna Mormont, they're named after the character of Lyanna from A Song for Leah, and the main character is Robb, two B's. A Song for Leah is a really important, influential story for George R. R. Martin. Won a bunch of awards and things like this. But essentially, in that story, he establishes that there's this thing called the Grishka that is this big gelatinous uh, thing that lives in a cave underground. And you can join the Grishka, and when you join the Grishka, you enter a state of hive-minded consciousness with billions of others, and you have eternal happiness forever, and you never die. And so it's a kind of a creepy idea, but of course, this is heaven. Like, this is what people tell you happens in heaven. Like, oh, when you die, you're going to have eternal happiness with God, and you get to be with all of your loved ones forever, and it's fantastic, you know? And so, but this is the kind of a weird, I had somebody very early in life, like, tell me the thought experiment, like, oh, if there were a machine that you could enter it, and you'd be happy forever, but you'd never die, would you enter that machine? And there's something kind of like odd and creepy about it. And of course, that's just heaven, right? Like you're just offering them heaven. Now, specifically in that story, though, there's a bit more to it. Is that before you join the Grishka, there's an initiation where they take a little bit of the Grishka and they slap it on your forehead, and so you get happiness in life too before you end up joining and dying, and you go out and you proselytize. Um, and this is the idea that like religion's role in life before you die is that it creates happiness in people. It gives them comfort that they're not going to die. The rest of us have this this daunting fear of going into nothingness. And hold on a second. Hey there. I am. I got him. I picked him up, and he's back home. Okay. Okay. Doctor later? Are we gonna? Try in the afternoon or something, or tomorrow. Okay. 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 Bye. Sorry, there was my baby was has a cough and was brought home from daycare, and so we've got to figure things out here. Um, and so if you've got so back to the Grishka, I think what an American thinks is thinking, well, if the werewood net is like the Grishka, and it is, it's just another fucking stand-in for heaven that George R. R. Martin is shoving into the story. It's exactly the same as the Grishka in every way. Could like in a song for Leah, there be a kind of reproducing aspect of it, or get a little bit of the Grishka like slopped onto people's heads and things like that. Um, and I suppose I'd be open to it, though they do mention like werewood acorns and things like that. So I don't know if it's necessary. Um, but I'd have to read more about like what the need is for it. Like, are does does are there is there a need for like proselytizing old god worshippers to have this like extra limb in the same way that the Grishka does? But that's what hmm I don't know, but it's not like the theory isn't out of nowhere. It's just I don't know if there's a necessity for it. Like, I get it. Like, it's kind of all Grishka related. Um, Stoneheart King. I do think it'd be interesting though if Stoneheart is like a king in the same sense that like, or a monarch in the same sense as Ares, because she does play a very specific role for Brienne that mirrors Ares for Jaime. Um, and this kind of, once I went through like the Brienne story, and you can all watch my Brienne series again, but like there's just so many parallels with Stoneheart and Ares, where like you're talking about it, having morality where you're just following somebody else, which is what these Kingsguard do. They just latch their trains onto somebody else. They don't need to think for themselves, and that's what Brienne has done with Catalan. And as good intentioned as it was when it started, like it, you have to think for yourself is the idea, and so she has to kill Catalan in the same way that Jaime killed Ares, in order to free themselves. Um, I think Robb and Leah were both fed the Grishka when they ate the sausages, and that Leah isn't reaching him at the end. Robb's just infected. I'd have to go back and read the sausages part. I think I had asked when I met George R. R. Martin. I'd asked him a question, because the story definitely does introduce a few sci-fi outs for what's going on with the Grishka, but I think George forgot about them all. Like, I don't necessarily think they were that important. So like one big one I had was like, was the Grishka actually using a psi lure? And I asked him like, was the Grishka using a psi lure after all? And he's like, I don't really remember. And this was one of the, so after Leah, so the story is essentially Robb and Leah are two telepaths who are really in love, and they feel that their love is greater than other people's loves because they actually read each other's thoughts. And so the rest of us, we can be in love, but we don't really know our mates. But they know each other because they're in each other's thoughts. And so when Leah decides to join the Grishka, Robb is devastated because he's like, how is she choosing the Grishka over me? That's overwhelming. And then because she's a telepath, she's able to send a message from the Grishka to Robb saying, join us. And Robb doesn't do it. And so then he kind of goes to the end and like starts talking about the experience, and somebody's like, yeah, I think it has a psi lore. It probably like pulls people in. It's probably like, that's how the thing feeds itself. And it was an interesting idea, and I asked George R. Martin about it, but George had forgotten. He's just like, that's not really how I remember or interpret the story. And I was like, okay, I mean, he put it in there, but he just forgot about it, because I think the thematic element of it is much more important, that it's a stand-in for heaven and things like that, and not these like little in the weeds things about the psi lore. Still, I do think it's kind of these ideas of like, I think it gets into a lot of different ideas about the Harangan mines and the werewood sending visions and stuff to people and things like that. But so not that like there couldn't be a little hint of something that like, oh, they ate some sausages and Robb is actually infected, that George could have put in there, but I don't think he thought it was important. I'm sure if you asked him about it, like he'd be like, I don't really remember, because the point of the story is, look, this is heaven, and this is religion, and this is heaven. This is my statement on it, and that's really what it is. Wow, it didn't take us to get off the topic of Robb's will. It all relates to what Robb's will. We were talking about like Catalan, Grishka, morality. Like this all gets into the same thing. Catalan did everything wrong. No, I mean, I'm not in that camp. I know that so many people have Catalan hate, but I'm not in that camp. Like, once the Clash of Kings hits, Catalan is absolutely right in everything she does in that entire book, and then no one listens to her. She's like, "Hey, Robb, you shouldn't trust Theon." Like, and usually in a Ice and Fire, when they establish something like that, like somebody says something like, "Oh, Theon's going to betray you," it means the opposite's going to happen. But she actually says it, like, Theon's going to betray you. And then Theon betrays him. And you're like, oh my, that's rare. That's very rare. But no, I love, people really get on the, did Catalan start the war by kidnapping Tyrion? Wasn't that really, really reckless? But you got to understand, like, all the stuff that had happened to her and the manipulation of others, and did it really make a difference? I don't think so. I think Varys and Littlefinger would have been creating elements of war anyway. So it's, I don't think it's that big of a deal. Yeah, Jon has no political sway, having spent the last 2 years as a boy at the Wall. He was considered a deserter at the time. Yeah, it's a and I don't actually think that the Robb's Will Catalan chapter is a very good chapter. And I think I kind of think Catalan's story in A Storm of Swords gets boring to me. She kind of becomes an observer. Like in A Clash of Kings, she's right there, like being a diplomat with Stannis and Renly, and she's dealing with Brienne, and she has the big choice with Jaime. She's such a power player in A Clash of Kings. And then A Storm of Swords happens, and she's kind of a watcher, and she spends a lot of time being like, "Oh, Robb, he's become such a great king. Oh, Robb, so fantastic." And then she just, and she's doing this. They're doing this because they're setting up the Red Wedding for Robb to die. But I don't think she's that well written in A Storm of Swords as she is in the previous books. And it's just being set up for that. And I just realistically, like, how many mothers would be sitting around being like, "Oh, he's such an adult. He's such a great king." Like this 16-year-old boy, like where is like the naggy, like, where, like insecure mother that's like, "I know my son and he's going to do this and then he's going to do this and he's going to fuck up." Like where is that? Um, Instead, she's like, what wise decisions. What a fantastic king he will be. I'm just like, So, I don't know. Maybe other people disagree with me in that. But, um, some spicy politics. What are your thoughts on the current China-U.S. relations? Are we entering another Cold War, or do you think this conflict will warm up into actual combat? What advice would you give Biden? Um, what I think is nothing has changed between the United States and China at all, and that's, I mean, there's little things that have like shifted on the margins, really tiny, you know, like, the China doing exercises after the Pelosi visit, or like Xi Jinping's like rhetoric going up a little bit. I think people are more scared about it because of Ukraine, but it's a completely different situation. And I think that with the US not having big news in the Middle East, or at least us being tired of the US news in the Middle East, that, you know, the media likes to create conflicts other places and talk about them. Um, like, we can't really talk about Afghanistan. We're not in Afghanistan anymore, and people don't care. And Iraq, Iraq's just at this like very slow, very small, slow burn kind of situation, and we've just kind of forgotten about that. We just don't think about the big problems of the world being in the Middle East anymore with the US. So when they're looking for stories, they can talk about Ukraine all day, but Ukraine is kind of the same story all day. Like, they're stuck in this like, they're stuck fighting over some city that most Westerners never gave a thought about, didn't know existed. And they're like, it's really important that this one city hold. No Westerner like knows what you're talking about. Like when you're talking about Eastern Ukrainian cities. And so they've got to get the fear in the consumer. But nothing's changed. Like, China's not invading shit. Like, there's no invading of Taiwan. Like, it's just not going to happen. And the U.S. is just going to continue to do their same thing. They're gonna sell weapons to Taiwan, and they're going to have the same like situation with China that they've had for the past. It's getting to be nearly 40 years. Like, not much has changed. And so I don't get why. Like, The Economist this week had an enormous like article, like an entire issue on the coming war between the United States and China. The Economist did this, like clickbait kind of stuff. Let me bring up this cover. Is that? This is the cover of The Economist this week. The struggle for Taiwan. And the issue has all of like the beaches that China could land on and invade. Not going to happen. They don't have the ships. They don't have the army. They don't have the men. It would be stupid. Everyone knows, like, but I don't know. It's just, I think people's rhetoric and people's fear like happens, but I don't think anything is changed at all. Let's see. The antlermen on the Isle of Faces are graft recipients. Oh, the antlermen on the Isle of Faces are graft recipients. Little werewoods are tiny branches attached to dead babies. Implication on who Ravenhall Hall propagates. He doesn't get into that part. I admit that's really intriguing. That's a really intriguing idea. So in a Clash of Kings, there's this really random, stupid, like non-group of people called the Antler Men, and they were just Stannis supporters that Joffrey decides to tie antlers to, and then like eject them over, and then catapult them into the Blackwater. And then they really have no impact on the story at all, like other than the fact that like they're mentioned later that, oh, a lot of the debt that the crown had was to them, and that because they're dead they can't give the money back or something like that, and so the crown is kind of SOL. However, because it's so random and silly, like people with these antlers, like that brings us to like the green men on the Isle of Faces, like who would visually look like. And so would they'd be more connected to the werewood by having branches of the werewood attached to their heads in the same way that the Grishka have the little globs on their heads. I mean, I admit that's pretty brilliant. I mean, it sounds fucking nuts to people listening, but like, that's pretty brilliant. That that they all want to join the werewoods by having like pieces of werewood like attached to their heads in order to like have more connection to them. That's that's pretty interesting. That's a pretty interesting idea. I'll really grant that. I mean, I don't know about like tiny little werewolves attached to dead babies, and how Raventree Hall propagates. That's I mean, Raventree Hall is the dead werewood, right? With the Blackwoods, but little pieces of werewood stuck on somebody's head in order to have them more connection. I mean, it would explain the Green Men and who they are, like why people think they have big antlers on their heads. That's it's not bad. That's not a bad theory. It's not a bad theory. Because I mean, I do like um I do like when there's like an in-universe explanation for something already. Like like inventing a new species of people that have antlers, like would be out of nowhere. But um, but having pieces of werewood stuck to their head, that's. I think I might. I think I might. I think I might be on that train. That's a pretty good train to be on. Hey Preston, pink letter question. I feel it was written by sent by Mance during pink letter question. I felt it was sent by Mance during Theon 1. Any later than this, I feel it wouldn't arrive prior to John 13. Thoughts on the chronology in the late A Dance with Dragons chapters? So I actually have a video it's perhaps the most in the weeds video I've ever done. And I think it's called The Timing of the Stab. Let me get the yeah, it's called The Timing of John's Stabbing. It is the most in the weeds video I've probably ever done. It's pretty bonkers. Anyway, I go phase by phase of the moon and all the hints of like moon phases throughout A Dance with Dragons to figure out exactly when the Battle of Ice is happening versus like John's story. And according to that, John's story is happening way before Theon's story. Like there is like a full month, meaning like, which is big in the sense that it takes about a month to get from the wall to Winterfell, so that you could actually have the wildlings or whoever head down from the wall and be part of the Battle of Ice. Like you could have that happen. Now, on the other hand, and this is a big hand, okay? George doesn't know how the fucking moon works. Okay? George like talks about half moons rising and things that just don't happen. Like so, and or like new moons being in the sky, like big black new moons in the sky. So when the moon is new, it doesn't rise. Like you don't see the new moon. You could never look at the sky and see a big black moon because like the moon doesn't go above the horizon when that happens. But he talks about black holes in the sky and new moons being in the sky. He talks about like the risings of moons in different phases that do not happen at certain times. Like he does not know anything about moon phases, but he throws them in the story. So on the one hand, like maybe he was paying attention to the phases of the moon on like a chart and like really put it in like that. Or maybe he doesn't know what the fuck he's talking about. He just throws in a fucking moon. So it's a big weight. But if you really want to know about like what I did the fucking breakdown. And it is true. I think Jon's stabbing happens like a full month before Theon won. Which means like, yeah, it would seem to be the pink letter would be, I mean, I'm always been on the pink letter as Mance kind of situation that all this stuff later, like Stannis having the pink letter and stuff like that. Like, no, it's like all that stuff with Jon's happened a long time ago. I was a bit surprised how little support China is giving to Russia. China, for the most part, like stays out of international conflicts and has a pretty bad relationship with Russia. I know people like to claim that you know, oh, they're both communist or something. They both hate America. That doesn't mean they like each other. They got some problems. They got a lot of problems. You know, China's right in Russia's heart. They could like, you know, if there's a country that could invade Russia, it's China, you know, but so they're never going to have good relations. And, you know, and you got to remember that the entire world's like nuclear situation is because America had nukes, so Russia got them. Russia had nukes, so China got them. China had nukes, so India got them. Pakistan got nukes because India got them. You know, it just goes in this like line. Like there's definitely tension, but yeah. And looking at Ukraine's the failure of Russia and Ukraine, like that was a land invasion, and they couldn't freaking manage that. What China think they're going to take Taiwan? Come on. Off topic. What's the significance of Euron's smiling eye? They always bring up his smiling eye, but if he has only one eye, I never really understood. Yeah, usually when people say smiling eye, they mean like it's squinting, you know, in like a smiling sense in that, you know. So it's I don't really get it. Um the so a lot of people have these theories about what is his eye, like maybe his eye is actually like, you know, the stereotype about the legend about pirates is that they wore patches so that they could go under deck and take off one patch and have it already adjusted to darkness and things like that. Though I'm pretty sure that Euron really does have some sort of black eye underneath there or something. You know, maybe he was hit or something and the pupil is always open. I'm not sure. But we'll see about that. So yeah, I mean, I don't know. I've even looked up like smiling eye. Like what does that mean? And it's just, you know, I guess. And if he has a patch on it, how is it a smiling eye? Like how can you even tell? But mm, mm, I'll have to do some more research on Smiling Eye. I've looked it up briefly, and it's just like this doesn't make any sense to me. Um, I get why China hasn't tried to take Taiwan, but those tiny islands Taiwan still controls are right beside the Chinese coast. You're talking about like there's a Jinmen and um, so this is most people don't know about these islands, but so Taiwan doesn't as a nation state like doesn't just control um, Taiwan Island. They control a whole bunch of little islands. So they got like Penghu, Jinmen, Matsu. This is up near Shanghai. This is down near Xiamen, Fuzhou, Fujian. Um, and so, yeah, they've always had these little islands, and China, you know, um, it's never taken them. Now, why haven't they ever taken them? Well, because Taiwan historically has had a much better navy, and they had for a while they had missiles there that could strike Chinese cities. I'm not sure if in a de-escalation move they moved stuff, um, but certainly China could probably take these smaller islands now. But it's a lot of effort and a lot of like flare up for something you know that doesn't have any value. Like there's nothing there. Like they're islands that like one produces some alcohol, and like they're military islands. So you'd be like causing all of these things. You'd be getting sanctions and causing disruptions. US would be angry at you, and might what for what like why like it's just there's just no point in it. So um grafting antlers might be the new phrase for tinfoil. That'd be nice. I've got some antlers grafted to my head. um Thoughts on using AI to get Roy Dotrice to read fanfic Winds of Winter? Also, when can we expect a Melisandre chapter? um so on Roy Dotrice, yeah, specifically there was a fan that Carmine was talking to who had who had who had put some of the Winds of Winter fanfic into the the AI and got a pretty good Roy Dotrice. The thing is he's, and I don't want to put anything on him because like these things cost money. Like you are allowed a certain number of words for a certain amount of money and stuff like that. So to do an entire book actually costs people money and puts on people. And it comes out okay. It doesn't come out like the Roy Dotrice, I admit, sounds better than a lot of them. Like they tried to, he did a test with George R. R. Martin's voice. He did a test with my voice. Um, and I do admit Roy Dotrice's voice sounds the best. And it's just the way Roy talked. He's gone. But so it is possible, but you're only like what happens is you do a number of words and you kind of test it out, and then sometimes you have to do little adjustments and things like that. And you're only allowed like 30,000 words through a certain like payment package, and you're talking like some of these books are hundreds of thousands of words or whatever. And so it's like I don't want to like put cost on people or something, but I think if it's perfected enough, and um maybe it can be done. But but it's being looked into, Roy Dotrice AI. But again, like I don't like with the fanfic, it's like I'm trying to keep all money out of this, like everything done by volunteers and everything. Um, and when can we expect Melisandre? Melisandre, I think fairly soon. I know people have been like bitching a bunch, and people like to say, when people bitch, like it doesn't. People, it does. So I'd I I'd like to do Sam first, and I would like to do Quentin. Um, but Melisandre is coming. Now, keep in mind that like I understand people are super interested in like Melisandre, but logically speaking, like how much is really gonna be happening in the Melisandre chapter? Um, Ghost is gonna escape probably north of the Wall. A lot of people are gonna die. you know, um, but and then the interesting people won't have arrived. Like you won't see Jane Poole and Justin Massey arrive yet. So unless you like fast forward a bit and do stuff in flashback, which is it's a possibility. Maybe that's the way to do it. See, I have to think through these things, like that you have to like have Mel after like a month later, and then flash back to what happened, and then have Justin Massey arrive with Jane Poole and things like that, and figure everything out. But I can tell you that like a Melisandre chapter, it's going to be a lot like the previous Melisandre chapter in that it's going to be her like insecure, down on herself, not thinking she has any power, which is kind of her in the last Melisandre chapter. Like I was thinking about just today. People, there's this question of like how old Melisandre is, and people are like, wait a minute, it's like how old's Melisandre? And there's this line in A Dance with Dragons where she says that Melisandre had practiced her art years beyond count, but she had paid the price, and you're like, well, she's lived years beyond count. Like how many years is that? Like, it's like, well, we have no idea. We have no idea how high Melisandre can count. We have no idea if she believes things like does she believe in reincarnation? Does she believe that she lived past lives? Like little things that can just get around the fact that she's just a human, like a regular human age, that she's actually like 40, stuff like that. So, because her being hundreds of years old, I just think it's silly. Like her being like 40 would just be funny, like years beyond count. I can only count to like 19, so. Um, what happened to those villagers that fled on boats that Euron and Arya stopped at in A Clash of Kings? If they went to the Isle of Faces where they sacrificed. This is a big mystery. So there's an abandoned village in A Clash of Kings that Arya goes to. This is right around the time that she faces Amory Lorch's men. And they come to a village and everybody's like jumped in boats. And the idea is that they all took their boats to the Isle of Faces for safety. And so, yeah, I mean, we'll see if they're sacrificed or not, but, or what happens on the Isle of Faces, who knows? That's clearly like the puzzle box, like the final puzzle box of the entire story, right? That if everything is going to come in the Isle of, like, others are going to march down south, and I always thought it was going to be the Isle of Faces because Daenerys has a dream about fighting the others and the rivers drying up, and you're like, oh, is it the Trident or something? So, but then the show had the last showdown at Winterfell, so I don't know, and there's stuff with that tree, but they'll have to show up. They'll have to show up, I guess, once we get there. I've been reading some things with regards to um, lice and like all the characters that could be in lice right now. When you pick a particular spot on the map, it's really quite funny how many different plot lines you can think of that can all cross into one place. So like when you're talking about lice, like okay, who's there? Well, sure, like Andrew Estermont and Edric Storm are in Lice, but you also had like Aegon's people passing through Lice, but then Victarion stopped in Lice too, and there was discussion of selling the slaves from the Shield Islands in Lice, um, and so he could be there, like, and all of the you could, but then there's like the wildlings that they took north of the wall and like they could end up down in a slave, like then you have all these like characters, like you can just pick a city like that, like you can pick Volantis and be like, well, who's in Volantis? Well, they said like various Dothraki were going to attack, and I think Lord Sunglass supposedly fled there, and you've got like Lady Nim's mom, and like you started like just picking a random place, and there's like a million people that have appeared previously that could show up because George just left all these fucking hanging like threads. So like people on the Isle of Faces, sure, maybe they're there with Robb's Tyrashi sellsword company, you know? Maybe they went to the Isle of Faces too. you know, gotta bring them back, bring everybody back. Um, Thank you for relieving my nerves. The Economist and Wall Street Journal is what I was referencing. This is random, but have you seen the Northmen? Thoughts? I have not seen the Northmen. Um, this is Skarsgård. I'm gonna have to. I have not seen it. This has Skarsgård and Alexander Skarsgård, because I understand there's like 55 Skarsgårds. Um, Ethan Hawke, Skarsgård, who is the producer, Nicole Kidman. So Alexander Skarsgård was on Big Little Lies with Nicole Kidman. So I imagine like they did all these scenes together, and then he's like, "Hey, can you be in my movie?" That'd be my guess. Bjork's in the movie. What? Willem Dafoe, which you can get Willem to do anything. He's. There's some actors that there's some actors that like that are good, but once they start doing bad movies, they just start doing bad movies forever. Like we forget how who is the guy from Jerry Maguire who won the Oscar? Um, Cuba Gooding Jr. Right? Cuba Gooding Jr. like started doing bad movies, and now he's just in bad movies, right? Even though this guy's an Oscar winner, right? But then there's people like Willem Dafoe and who can be in as many good or bad movies, and they're still like, no, you're awesome, or um, there, Ben Kingsley is another one. He'll be in any movie. Michael Caine will be in any movie. Um, uh, Hannibal Lecter, he'll be in any movie, and it doesn't matter. Like they're still like the incredible actors. They can be in whoever. So I think it's funny about him. But I've not seen The Northman. I'm sorry. Let's see here. I gotta rush ahead. Sorry. Oh, thank you, Ryan. Um, uh, is Jaqen Hagar the anti-Bran, and is he trying to kill him so people have free will? Huh. So I always had a theory that Jaqen Hagar, even though most fans have this theory that Jaqen Hagar is in Old Town to get the book, the Blood and Fire tome, because he wants dragons and he wants to kill the world or something, and they want to kill everybody. I always thought that Jaqen H'ghar was there for the glass candle, and it's one of my theories that's like somewhat vindicated by the fact that like, or somewhat confirmed by the fact that like G. Steph found a previous version of A Feast for Crows, and Jaqen was there to get the glass candle. Um, I do think that like the glass candle is there because he wants to find somebody. He has a target and he has a mark, and the glass candle is going to help him find that mark. And so my big my big um, tinfoil after that was that his mark was Bloodraven, and that they wanted to get him out. You know, somebody figured out the Bloodraven's still alive, and that they wanted to get him out of the picture before the Blackfire invasion or the Aegon invasion. So this was my idea, but is he trying to kill him so people have free will? So I think so. George R. R. Martin is for the most part an existentialist or a secular humanist, whatever you want to call it, and he believes in like finding your own morality and establishing your own code. Like this is definitely like something that he's part of, but he is also violently anti nihilism. He hates nihilism, and I think he associates like, if I were to guess that the death cult of the House of Black and White is a nihilistic cult, and so I don't think there's anything in there that George R. R. Martin is going to is praising. So I don't know if like Jaqen H'ghar's mission would be to have people have free will. I think he would want one of the characters, one of our to do that in their own pursuit of morality and code, versus a nihilist like Jaqen H'ghar. Though I don't know, is Jaqen H'ghar a nihilist? He has his own code, his own freaking three deaths for a death and stuff that doesn't make sense. It's weird to hear someone mention shaman without a crew of people popping out of a garbage can to correct pronunciation. Then I remember we don't have garbage cans here. Oh, so this is a Taiwan joke. Garbage cans are really difficult. So in Taiwan they charge you for how much trash you produce, and it's like weighed, and you get a bill, and so it's like trash cans are just, there's just no trash cans anywhere. Like people find like a small park that'll have one, and they'll bring out their like house trash and like shove it in the middle of the night, or they're like, people will sneak into the 7-Eleven and like shove it in the 7-Eleven's trash can in the back. Yeah, I'm a really, my Chinese pronunciation is horrible, so like xiamen is this city across the straits, and Fujian province has heavy ethnic ties with Taiwan. It's where most people came from 400 years ago. So like like the languages of Fujian province in China, and Xiamen, and it's Fuzhou province, Fujian city, and or am I getting that backwards? No, Fuzhou would be the province, right? Fujian and Xiamen, like, they'd all, so I say Xiamen, but people from Xiamen or Taiwan would probably say what, Xiamen, because they do different pronunciations. It's really, Chinese is really from place to place, like how people pronounce things is insanely different, and so it's it's like trying to, I'm not in a negative way, but like, do you remember that character from Big Bang Theory who has the speech impediment, and he's like "Quiwi blah blah blah," and you're like you have to decipher, you have to like switch all your like consonants to a different sound and like try to figure it out, like trying to understand Pig Latin or something, and it's similar with Chinese. Thoughts on the possibility of Brandon being the father of Jon Snow? So, for a long time, I pushed forward the theory of perhaps R plus L equals D and B plus L equals J. Um, and I definitely think, timeline wise, it makes sense as it makes as much sense as anything else. George possibly left open the idea. In the end, I just think I kind of abandoned it and it was like, fine, let's just go with the show. It makes more sense that John being the son of Rhaegar and creates more division and creates more chaos. He's not the savior. He's a problem. I think that makes more sense in George's thematic mind, and that all these lineage things are kind of silly discussions in the end because it doesn't matter. Like it doesn't matter. Like it's like Jace Valarian. Like who's his dad? It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. Like it was about whoever was going to win that fucking war would put, if Rhaenyra won and Jace survived, like he'd be on the throne. It doesn't matter who his dad was. Lineage doesn't. It's useless. So I kind of just taken the position in the past many years that all of these lineage things are stupid. They're stupid discussions. Like it doesn't matter because power resides where people think it resides, that kind of thing. But I think I was probably a big stoker of people people putting other ideas of who John's parents are. I mean, there's a lot of interesting things that come out of Brandon and Ashara being John's parents, like the fate of Starfall and the reasoning why Ned would keep things a secret and stuff like that. And, it in many ways, it does make a lot more sense. If John is the son of Brandon and the whole reason he married Kat and like their entire marriage and the entire alliance rests on the fact that like Robb, that John could be could usurp Robb, is a big sticking point, especially if like Ashara and Brandon were actually married in front of a werewood and all of that shit, like, and that John is trueborn. Then it's an actual like interesting secret that Ned is keeping, to keep everything together and to keep his like marriage with Catalan together and things like that. That Catalan wants Robb, and because otherwise it's just like. So I think it's a lot more interesting. I just don't necessarily think that in the end that that's what George decided. Even though I think it's a better story. If young Griff fake, why would Varys lie to a dying Kevin? So I'm personally of the belief that we're never going to find out young Griff's like identity. That it doesn't really matter. That Varys is going to tell different people a different story. However, there is a question of like, is there something in what Varys says to Kevin that insinuates that that Aegon is real? And certainly John Con thinks Aegon's real. And I would even say that based on previous versions of A Dance with Dragons, Halden Halfmaester certainly thinks Aegon's real. And we have to bring up the epilogue here. Let me see here. Hold on a second. Because I want to get the exact quote. Because a lot of people argue about whether or not, like, let's see. He says, so he says, Aegon is here. right? Aegon is real. What is it? What does he say? What's the line? Now I gotta go back to find it again. It's right here at the end. He is here, not Aegon is here. He is here. Aegon has been shaped for rule since before he could walk. He's been trained his arms as befits a knight. He reads and writes. He has studied history. He can fish. Aegon knows kingship. So I think the question is Varys lying, or is he even like twisting the truth here? Let me bring up the actual. Let's see. One second here. Because he does drop. What I love about the ending is that like, it actually implies that Varys is not a eunuch. That he's been lying about being a eunuch the entire time, which is, I think, hilarious. Like, that all the stories, like the stories about him being cut and everything, it's just done. Like, he's just lied. I think it's absolutely hilarious that he's not a eunuch. Let's get this. All right, let's get this here. No, he said Aegon is dead. He's dead. No, the eunuch's voice seemed deeper. He is here. Aegon has been shaped for rule since before he could walk. He's been trained in arms as befits a knight. But that was not the end of his education. He's worked with his hands, swum the rivers. He mends nets. He learned to wash. Aegon knows that kingship is a duty. Now, one could say, like, okay, his real name is Aegon. Maybe he's not the son of Rhaegar, but then he says, well, Aegon rises his banners above Storm's End. So one could argue that, like, he doesn't actually say that he's Rhaegar's son. He's just a guy named Aegon, right? I'm trying to think if there's something where he actually says, forgive me, it was done for the realm, for the children. I have children, none in this room. You are threatened. Grand Maester befouled himself, dying. Whilst Aegon rises his banner. Aegon, dead, he's dead. No, he's here. So, I mean, I don't necessarily think there's anything. I mean, maybe I'm missing something, but I don't think there's anything that says he's Aegon, the son of Rhaegar. You know, like maybe he's, Aegon Johnson. We have no idea. Aegon could be anything. Could be Aegon anybody. Maybe I'm missing a quote. Potential powers of Bloodraven's weirwood arrows. I think the idea is that once you would shoot that arrow into somebody, right, you'd be able to get all their thoughts and suck them into the weirwood net. Get all their knowledge. Yeah, wouldn't that be the case? I mean, or does would they get sucked into the? I mean, weirwood, even dead weirwood, definitely contains the souls of children of the forest. So, maybe they're pulled in. Would that arrow need to be rejoined with the ground, or could the souls go from the weirwood wood into something, into the ground? But I think you'd be able to, like, get everybody's knowledge. There's this weird line about ravens that Marwyn mentions, how ravens are only useful after battles, and how Walgrave wanted to be eaten by his ravens when he died. there's this idea that like maybe they when they were consuming the ravens that hold on a second. Hey there. 好，你好。嗯，我们还没有去医生，no no 对对对，哦对对，这 I think afternoon. I think maybe afternoon. Yeah, yeah. Okay, okay. Yeah, yeah. Okay. Uh, okay, okay, okay. All right. What? Okay. 谢谢，谢谢. All right, bye. All right. Okay. Um. Let's see. Well, Danny's dragons lay eggs. What's stopping them? Um. Are they old enough? But I think can it get that point in the story? Like they definitely with the 5 year gap dropped. There was definitely like a point in which the like dragons had to develop faster. Like it was definitely a situation where uh, they want like George wanted the dragons to grow up slowly, and then the 5 year gap is dropped, and he's like, oh, I can't. I've got to have them grow up fast. And so it's kind of ridiculous, right? That the dragons are like trying to think like a year and a half old, and they're just getting they're already like adult size, like bearing weight, So um, yeah, um, so the I think maybe it's story. It'd be something like maybe at story's end there'd be like a an egg laid, but I think just age wise, it doesn't seem like they'd be old enough to have the eggs. That's just my guess. But thank you, 13. Um, you may like the Northmen because it's Shakespearean and historically accurate. The writer director does diligent research. He also made The Witch. Oh, okay, okay. All right, I'll have to check it out. I'll have to check it out. I've heard good things about the Northmen. So, um, do you believe love and mercy are themes in A Song of Ice and Fire? Oh, definitely. I definitely think that's the case that they're trying to um, that George is trying to push that in the end, that there needs to be more love and mercy in people and things like that. Like this all does have like a hippie, like if you like George is a hippie, like he believes in hippie thoughts, like he believes everything hippies believe. So like a peace loving weed smoking hippie that goes to a Grateful Dead concert, like what they believe is going to be what George believes. Like, man, we just all need to like love, man. Like he doesn't really, George doesn't believe in marriage. He doesn't believe in money. I mean, he does now, but he's kind of a communist. Like, he's super hippie. He's super hippie. Um, so I think those are going to be the themes in the end. Um, oh, I was saying Brandon plus Liana equals John. So, Brent. So, this is a funny one because Starkcest, um, Starkcest is is this belief that like um the reason so in a Game of Thrones like there's nothing that really makes sense about Ned like just um outing Cersei and figuring out that she was having sex with her brother. Like that comes out of nowhere. And everybody's like, "Oh, but you had the book and you had all of like the the thinking things through about like the seed is strong. And it's like, yeah, no, that all proves that like Robert is not the father, but he has no research about anything else. So like, why Cersei isn't having an affair with anybody else that she's close with in the story, such as Lancel or Preston Greenfield, like, some Kingsguard, like, all of these other Kingsguard, like Boris Blount, like Maren Trant, like she spends private time with them. So the idea is that like Ned, the reason like he thinks immediately of the incest is because he knows about like Brandon and Lyanna's incest, which is a funny thing. I mean, I think it's a funny idea, but I don't think it's as interesting as Ashara, only because like you can't get the marriage, and it does, his relationship with like Kat would be a little different. And I don't know if incest would be allowed in northern marriages. Probably not, like, so I don't think Lyanna and Brandon would be married, which I think is takes away some interesting ideas. Though I think it's funny that I think it's funny to think about like Ned Stark super sleuth and how silly the whole situation is, and to find. Um, George is a socialist, yet you aren't. Interesting. Um, so I kind of think I'm a capitalist and a socialist at the same time. I think I think the word socialism doesn't mean so many different things that no one really knows how to define it anymore. Um, so what do you mean, like, like collective ownership of stuff? I believe in collective ownership of stuff. Do believe like the government needs to provide social programs for people? Yes, absolutely. Do I think that, like, the government has an essential role to play in the capitalist market and things like this? Yeah, yeah. Um, but do I believe that like the government should be setting prices on all products? No, no. I think the market can decide that too. Um, I think George is well beyond, like, or at least at a time, I don't know him today, but like there was a time where I'd say like George is against marriage. Like he believed marriage was wrong, like as an institution, um, despite the fact that he's been married twice. Like I think there's a lot of statements he's been, makes about that. Like very, very kind of like hippie, close to commune living kind of ideas. Like I think George is, he's much more focused on like imperialism and like the horrors of imperialism, and I'm not as like focused on that. I'm kind of like, well, somebody's going to be imperialistic. It's just it's, like what, everybody's imperialistic. Like I don't understand. Like I don't necessarily think I'm as focused on that, but like, you know I firmly believe that like Sweden and Finland and Norway have like, and Denmark have like a better, like they're definitely set up better, and that we should be emulating them. And many people call their governments socialist. So like I'm socialist in that sense. Like, so um, I'm more of a, I'm very, just very practical. I don't kind of subscribe to the, I just kind of say like what actually works. Um, can't, um, can't wait. Damon good guy video. Yeah, I know. Any other Targs deserving historical vindication? Aegon the Fourth, Maegor. You'll keep overanalyzing the dragons beyond DOD. This is a Death of Dragons. He's saying it's DOD. Yeah, no, I'm gonna keep going. into Princess and the Queen territory and beyond, and as far as it goes. But other Targaryens deserving historical vindication. I don't know if vindication is quite strong enough, but I think that like you can definitely have more sympathy for where they're coming from. I do think that when we look at, say, Aegon the Fourth or Maegor, that once we eventually discover their true motivation, it won't justify their actions, but we'll understand them more. That if they're not different from Rhaegar in a sense, then so that kind of thing. But I don't know. Isn't every human being like, once you spend enough time with them, don't you start sympathizing and I understand where they're coming from. Oh, they were just the roads to hell was paved with good intention. So social democrat, neoliberal, and socialist still have meanings. I don't think they do. I don't think the term neoliberal and socialist really have meanings anymore. I think that because like what you're communicating to somebody, there are these like broad terms that could describe everyone. Everyone on earth could be described as a socialist or a neoliberal, like by someone else, and we all have these like beliefs about that like align somewhat with these things. It's the equivalent of saying like let's say I sometimes believe that like war is justified, that someone could be like, well, you're just a warmonger. Or if I sometimes believe that peace is justified, I'm a peacenik. Like this like in this real need today to like label people like, you're a blank with an entire like ideological background labeled on that someone else believes to be something completely different. Like the fact that like neoliberal, the fact that like leftists throw it on all Democrats is a bit weird, and why they're doing it, because they're conflating liberal and neoliberal, and that in people's minds they don't know the difference between a liberal and a neoliberal. So when you say neoliberal, everything's gonna be like conflating, like to say like the common thing, say like, but we're back in 2016, how easy it was, where everybody's like, oh, Hillary's just a fucking neoliberal, I'm supporting Bernie. I'm sorry, like, how is there any difference between Bernie and Hillary when it comes to the concept of neoliberalism? That is ridiculous. Like, that's like, when you really like get Bernie down, I understand that Bernie's like anti-TPP, but when you really got to like break him down, you'd be like, really, you're against like, free market capitalism. Like, what you want us to like put up trade barriers between like West Virginia and Pennsylvania? They'd be like, oh, well, no. I don't mean that. You're like, oh, then, like in Pennsylvania, they make Utz potato chips. Am I able to like send those to Maryland, or do I need a tariff? Oh no, well that's fine because we're in the same country. So like, where do your trade barriers like exist? And if he would be against like all trade, like would he be for all trade barriers or against all trade barriers? You could label anybody a neoliberal. Or anybody the opposite. Like, no one is for complete, like, no one really is for like complete, like, free markets deciding the price of everything. And no one is for like the government establishing like price on everything. No one is for like absolute free trade in all circumstances, while no one is for like absolute trade barriers and tariffs everywhere. So this is why I think they're really stupid terms. They're thrown around as like slander, as like insults. Oh, you're a neoliberal hack. Like, what do you fucking like? What do you mean by that? What do you mean? Like, oh, you're a globalist. Like, oh, so I don't want to get like my shoes are made in Vietnam. I want all of my shoes to be made like locally. I don't want guac at Chipotle. Like, do I want guac at Chipotle? Like, oh, if I want guac at Chipotle, I'm a globalist. Well, fine, I'm a fucking globalist. They don't have any meaning. They're just they're I don't know how they would advance conversation or even bring about like any understanding between people by like throwing like huge labels, like ist labels on people. Like it just doesn't it forces people into these like extreme theoretical like positions, or you're pushing someone into this extreme theoretical position that has no meaning in the real world. It's I don't know. It's just silly to me. It's absolute silly. I believe much more like that people who make socialism believe anything that might benefit anyone who isn't a mega billionaire. Um, I mean, the term socialism like means so many different things depending on between depending on the context, that it's almost a meaningless word. Like collective ownership of something, collectively doing something. We're human beings. We collectively do stuff. Like everything's fucking socialism. Everything's fucking socialism. Like I don't like even these people that like hate socialism and will die to end socialism. They're super pro US military. And you're like, well, the military is socialism. Like all of it's socialism. Like it's just um uh Neil deGrasse Tyson interview with George R. Martin had a picture book from George as a 7-year-old exclusively about different solar system formations that made Neil deGrasse Tyson's jaw drop. I can't believe he doesn't know how the moon works. Well, I mean, I think that if I think if you ask the average person like when does the moon rise, um I th- I think they don't know. Like, do you know? I think some of George's mistakes are a bit weird. Like the fact that like the sun sets and the moon rises, and there's never the moon during the day. Um, but I think most people know that, like, oh yeah, I've seen the moon during the day. Like I've seen the moon during daylight hours. Like I think most people understand that the moon can be up during the day. Um, George seems to miss that one because it's only up at night. But if you ask the random person, like, do you know that like a half moon can never be like rising above the horizon or something like really specific like that? You'd be like, oh, no, I don't know about that, or that can't be a half moon directly overhead or something like that. They're like, then people would be like, I have no clue. I have no clue when and where in the sky a half moon or a crescent moon or can be. And I think it's borderline for people to know that like a new moon isn't in the sky. I think a lot of people would make that mistake. Like they're oh really? There's no new moon in the sky? Like, oh, I didn't know that it was always below the horizon. So yeah, it's weird. I mean, maybe George is describing like super weird world. Maybe half the moon is painted black in the Ice and Fire universe, and when it's just turned around, and we're seeing the black side of it. I don't know. Um, Slavery. I don't even know if slavery has much meaning anymore. I mean, like is indentured servitude slavery? Is sweatshop slavery? Well, not technically, you know. So like people love to throw around slavery too, like oh that's slavery. Well, nah. I mean, I get what you're saying. You're trying to get the horrid images of slavery and saying that they apply here too. But I don't necessarily. I think that it gets to the point where words stop meaning stuff. Like, I mean, I believe this about things like the word racist doesn't necessarily mean anything anymore. Like, everything can be defined as racism, and you're like, well, ethnicity I don't necessarily think has much meaning anymore, because everything can be ethnicity. When people are like, oh, you're anti-Muslim, you're being racist, and you're like, well, Muslim isn't a race, but like people will use that all the time. Like somebody's making an anti-Muslim comment and they're like, oh, you're racist. Well, if I say something like, Greeks are all lazy, and be like, well, you're being racist. Well, Greece isn't a race, it's a country. And I'm just saying that randomly. I don't believe that. I picked a random country there, but like, so I think there's a lot of words that just don't mean anything today. And if I were having a discussion with someone and I was being realistic about sharing ideas, I would never use neoliberalism. I would never use socialism. I would never use slavery. I would never use racism. Like those were like, because I would be talking about very specific priorities and policies that I would want in place. And I don't think that these large abstract terms are helpful, because they're too confusing to people. And this goes for other things too. Like, I don't use the word disinterested anymore because people don't know what it means, and they use it. George R. R. Martin doesn't know what it means. He misuses disinterested. And like, well, I mean, I understand like language changes, and once you start misusing it, all of a sudden that's the definition. I understand that too. But like, disinterested means neutral. But if I use disinterested, people are going to think I mean uninterested. So I just will say like neutral, because people will be confused. So I would never use the term neoliberal or socialist or slavery, because it's not precise and it's dumb now. Because people have ruined the fucking words by misusing them and using them all the time. So I just don't do it. I mean, slavery, if I'm talking about like American slavery during the Civil War, yeah, I'd use the word slavery. But like in a modern sense, I don't know like when I would use the term slavery, because it's just too confusing. Is George R. R. Martin socialist? The irony. It's very boomer. It's very, very boomer. Especially some of the things I've seen him say in interviews in the past 10 years is you're like, oh, you're a classic boomer. 60% of Americans live paycheck to paycheck under capitalism. 60% of Americans can't afford a sudden $400 expense. So yeah, I would say things are working here. So this is the other thing, is that like, and we're getting into some spicy politics. It's not that the situation of Americans living paycheck to paycheck being a bad situation. Now, no, that's a bad situation, and we need to talk about useful mechanisms to ameliorate that situation. Okay, and if you just kind of go, oh, well, it's under capitalism. Well, what specifically about capitalism is causing that situation? Because 60% of Americans live paycheck to paycheck under the moon. Should we get rid of the moon? Right? Like, you have to be very specific. You can't just throw out super abstract shit. It's not helpful. It's not helpful. Like, the entire system like runs on capitalism. You know? So when you're saying like, oh, well, we just need to tear every fucking thing down, you're like, well, hold on a second. Like, what specific problem is there, and what's the specific solution? You can't, like, how can we then communicate that to policymakers to have real laws that help people? Does there need to be greater social programs? Like, yes, I would say there's the first, like, let's increase food stamps. Let's increase earned income tax credit. Let's, you want to do a universal income, I'm totally for that. But when you throw around terms like under capitalism, like I don't know. Like, first of all, like, as an economist, I don't think you can undo capitalism. Like, I think capitalism, like, even if you create a socialist market, black markets exist that are capitalistic. So, like, I don't even think you can remove capitalism, like, from the world. Like, I think that's just the nature of how people trade goods. Um, so, like, it's not helpful. Like, it's not helpful to pick something so abstract as the thing that you're going to try to take down. Like, let's be specific. Like, what do you want to do? Like, then we can communicate that to policymakers and actually help people. Like, saying that like we need to bring down capitalism. Well, that's just great. Great. Like, you know what we need to do? We need to get to go to Alpha Centauri. Well, how? How? like, um, what do you think is inside the wall? I think it's a refrigeration unit. I think it's a large refrigeration unit um, that works on geothermal energy. But that's me. But I mean, the wall heals itself. And that's just ridiculous. Um. But that's the long and short of it. Do you think Benjamin plus L equals J? There's hints, thoughts. This kind of falls in the same category as Brandon plus Liana equals J. Like, I think is it's I think that I don't really think that George did it. Like, I understand that it makes a good story, but I don't necessarily think that it's something that George put in there. I do think it makes a good story. I think it answers the question of why um, uh, um, Ned like thought there was incest in the original story, but like I don't think it was necessarily the case. I just don't think it was probable. I just don't think that like George was really thinking about it. Um, Also, during his outline, he kind of says that, like, because it's an original outline, he wants this John Arya romance, but then like after he discovers his true paternity, it kind of feels like John suddenly feels like he can go for Arya. Like, before they had the like, oh, we're half siblings, we can't. But if finding out he's only a cousin, I guess with Benjen and Liana, he's still just a cousin, but I guess I don't know. I mean, you're still so inbred at that point. um, Hillary was a major war hawk. I don't really understand where that comes from. I mean, I don't understand like what war? Like, what war was she a war hawk for? Um, like, and also to say like major war hawk. Like, that's the other thing. Like, major war hawk. I mean, I'm sure she voted for the Iraq. I'm sure she voted for like the Iraq War or something. But everybody did back then. It was like a time with 9/11, and she's the senator from New York. Like, what do you think she's gonna fucking do? But like, I don't think there's any like, do I think she'd be starting wars? Like, that's like, where are you pulling it out from? It's just like created nonsense. That's just like, um, it's just created nonsense. Like, you have no basis for it. There's no evidence for it. She was just she's a pretty liberal Democrat. Like, that's it. Like, I don't know. Like, um, I don't know. I don't even get it. Like what specifically like set her apart from every other politician at the time? Like give me an example of like what she voted for compared to everybody else, you know, and what you expected her from her as the New York senator, um, versus like Bernie, who I can be like Bernie, major fucking pro gun asshole. Like, oh really? Is he? Well, he is from Vermont, where everybody has a fucking gun. So am I going to be like, oh, you know, Bernie loves to fucking like murder kids in Texas? Like he's so Uvalde because he's against gun. Like you know, Bernie gets really low grades on his gun legislation stuff. I can pick like one little thing like that and be like, well, what do I expect? He's a fucking senator from Vermont. Like you know, there's nothing I can really like label her on that. But um, yeah, it's potato chips are from Pennsylvania, uh, right? How do people not know this? I think it's because everybody ate them in Maryland, and so I thought they were from Pittsburgh, but I have to. I'll double check it. Yeah, Hanover. They're from Hanover. Yeah. Um. Uh, Clinton is a neoliberal as it was used to apply to Vietnam hawks who switched from the Democratic to the Republican Party after '68. I think you're confusing the Southern Democrats and their movements, but I don't think that it had much to do with Vietnam. But Hillary wasn't pro Vietnam. I don't get any of these things. Um, Basic gist is that workers owning the means of production. I mean, people talk about this a bit, but it's like, aren't stock options workers owning the means of production? I don't think it necessarily like changes too much. Like, don't get me wrong, like I'm fine with unions and such, but I don't necessarily think that like workers owning the means of production like um changes much. And I understand that you might define socialism that way, but um most people don't define socialism that way. Like most people don't boil socialism down to workers owning the means of production. Like that's just not what people think when like they rail against socialism. It's not what um uh it's I mean, I understand that like in your specific definition that can be it, but keep in mind the rest of the world doesn't use that term. Like I can define something one way and the rest of the world isn't going to define it that way. So I mean, you just got to keep in mind that like that is a case. You know, like um I had this argument years and years ago, and it was about the definition of the word racism. And the guy like interrupts people and he's like, "This is my pet peeve, man. This is my pet peeve. The word racism by definition is institutional." And I was like, no, it's not. Like, what do you, no, it's not. Like, you can't, you individually can't change the definition of a word. Okay. People use the word racism to mean so many things. Sometimes it's institutional. Sometimes it's just one dude. Like, you know, like some redneck living off the grid in the middle of nowhere who has nothing to do with any institution or system can still be a racist, you know? So like get it, like you know, you can totally think that socialism can just boil down to workers owning the means of production. Not what it means. Okay, like, or not what it means solely. Like, just get that the word has been fucked. Like, the word's fucked. There's no putting it back in the toothpaste. Like, there's no putting the toothpaste back in the tube. Just like the word disinterested, the word nauseous, like the word's been fucked. Like, and it doesn't mean anything anymore. Um, I think I was too hard on Critical Drinker. Check out his last order stream where he's alone with Mahler. Both are non-political and quite reasonable. Um, Look, I'm not gonna. Here's the thing: is that at some point, like, yeah, like you can't necessarily be judged by necessarily who you associate yourself with, but the dude has worked with Nerdrotic for so long, and Nerdrotic is a straight up, like racist, sexist, Christian nationalist piece of shit. Like, now Critical Drinker is like in Scotland. He doesn't fucking like, doesn't know fucking shit about American politics and all that, and doesn't know what a piece of shit Nerdrotic is. Okay, but just on his association with him, like, the dude's a sack of shit. But like, also, you can't tell me he's not, in some sense, like playing into the same Andrew Tate bullshit. I don't want to say he's like actually like putting people in, like making sex slaves in Romania, but I'm talking like he's packaging cool masculinity and trying to, like, with his aviators and his booze, and being like, yeah, the hip cool way to view movies and media is like a guy. And you know what it is to be a guy? It's drinking and being a man and not dealing with like all this like feminist stuff. And so, and his audience, you got to remember, are a bunch of like impressionable idiots. And so every time he puts up the message thing, and he has in there things like environmentalism and feminism, which are good things, he's messaging his audience, these are bad things. You shouldn't care about environmentalism. You shouldn't care about feminism. And it's unforgivable in a sense. Like, he knows what he's doing. He knows the train he's riding. He knows the clickbait thumbnails he does. Like, he knows that shit. Like, he's on the same, like, he's not as bad as the Quartering or fucking Nerdrotic, but like, he's riding that same fucking train, and he's making money off that same fucking train. And you can just go through the comments and the absolute shitheads that are in there. And I mean, every comment section has shitheads. I have shitheads, but like, he's got so many shitheads, and the way they're interpreting his stuff is just ridiculous. Now, at the end of the day, like, you know, do I think he can't have like good insight on stuff? I'm sure he does. You know, I'm sure he's a smart guy with good insight, but he's fucking ridden that the whole sexist, racist, like anti-woke train to get his audience, that he's polluted people's minds. Oh, what's going on, man? What's going on?
Preston, what are you doing? Are you starting a YouTube beef again? Are you doing this again?
YouTube beefs are fantastic. You know,
I wouldn't know. I always try to keep my nose clean. That's Preston's like, are you kidding me face?
Yeah.
Wait, what were you ranting on? Critical Drinker?
Oh, a second ago? Yeah.
Oh, I mean, you really did like rip on the guy unnecessarily multiple times during your House of the Dragon reviews.
Oh yeah. And the reason, like, there is a reason where I focus on him. And even though you think he's like hopeless, like, I think that like if enough people ripped on him, he could fucking change, and he could fucking change his audience. Okay.
Why would he want to change anything when he's making so much money off of what he's doing now?
I mean, maybe at some point he'll think his audience is big enough that he'll be able to like fucking start being a human being. Now, I don't think that like the people he associates with will ever get to that point, but it's like finding the lowest hanging fruit, the guy who, like, there's a glimmer of hope that guy is not an absolute 100% piece of shit. But you're right that no, he's not going to change. But
I will say this. Because I got into a conversation with someone about this a couple of weeks ago, and they were calling Critical Drinker a racist. And I said, I personally can't call him a racist because I need to hear or see him do something racist. And the reason they were calling him a racist is because some of his thumbnails are fucking insane. It's the one I showed you about the black dwarf woman eating a Big Mac and like the black
Oh,
elf with
that's not critical
cornrows.
drinker. That was nerdrotic.
Oh, that was nerdrotic.
Yeah,
Thank you.
nerdrotic. I'm quite comfortable calling a racist. I'm quite comfortable calling this guy a racist.
The conversation was about nerdrotic. They all kind of feel the same to me. I can't
Critical-
call him a
critical
racist
drinker-
because I need to see him do something.
I wouldn't call him a racist, but I would say he's riding the same train. You know. But
Well, what I was saying in regards to nerdrotic then is that I can't call him a racist because the person was trying to call him a racist based on those thumbnails. And yeah, those thumbnails are pretty bad, but he's dancing. He's dancing around that line of what's like acceptable or not. Cause like, why is she eating the Big Mac? Like I feel as though it was not a Big Mac before, and he's like, all right, tone it down to his editor, and the editor probably toned it down from what the original item was that she was eating to a Big Mac.
Oh, you're saying like originally
you know what
fried chicken.
It was probably fried. Like I'm not, I'm not gonna lie. It was probably that. And he's like, "All right, tone it down." And he probably.
Oh, I'm sure. I'm sure. I mean, it's over the top stuff. I mean, like it's yeah.
What's going on? What's happening? Is Alex here to ruin the conversations? What's going on? I'm lost on what's happening.
I'm just going back and forth in our discussions. We're getting a lot of spicy politics on it. This is really like left-wing people like devouring themselves. Like like
what else is new?
Right now,
What else is new? By the way, I don't know if you know this. You and I always get criticized because you mentioned Vosh one time. So now all of a sudden the internet thinks that you have a Vosh tattoo on your ass cheeks. Did you get that? Did you get also tagged in that shit on Twitter too?
I don't know.
Yeah, you did. You got tagged on it.
Oh, really?
So you mentioned Vosh one time. So now every Destiny fan and like Hassan fan has to like tag you and me and like trying to make Vosh look like an asshole. And I really don't care. But because you're talking about leftists eating each other, those three are like the main like leftist streamers right now. Mm-hmm. And they cannot like stop shitting on each other. Your boy Destiny specifically. He's always trying to start mad shit for no reason. For no reason at all.
Well, Destiny lives and breathes on like scandal. And so he had a huge beef with like Vosh. Vosh got big enough that he like doesn't like to talk about Destiny as much, but Destiny still talks about Vosh, you know. But like all three of them, I think that anything that brings more people to the left and to vote Democrat is a good thing. And all three of them will tell people to go vote Democrat. Okay. And so in that sense, you know, I think they bring good to the world, you know, just in the sense that they all have their stands and they all bring more voters to the Democratic Party and the policies that the Democratic Party is pushing forward, you know. And so I think that that's the path to positive change in America. There's no other path to positive change in America. And so as long as they're on that path, I like them all. But it's like, you know, like this is like Preston's trying to undermine anti-capitalist terms. Please, someone stop him. This is funny because it's like I fundamentally believe that like we need a system like Finland. I don't think that going around using anti-capitalist terms and like talking about tearing down capitalism is going to be useful. I don't think that's a productive, like point. You know. If anything, it's going to drive people like past the Democratic Party. Like I don't insult the Democratic Party. Like it's just the Democratic Party like is if you're going to be looking for positive things to happen in America, you have one channel and that's the Democratic Party. Okay. So like you can trash it all you want, but you know that you're like, that's your one fucking way to go. Like, you know, it's the only train out of town. You know, it's not a perfect train.
Preston, I'm gonna be right back for a bit. So give me a couple minutes if you don't mind.
Sure.
I'll be here. Just give me a couple minutes.
Here we go. If the moon is in orbit at the L2 Lagrangian point, it would only appear at night. If it wasn't as dense as ours, it could be much larger and visible. So when he talks about the L2 Lagrangian point, there's a between Earth and the sun, there's various points in which you get the gravitational pull of the sun is equal to the Earth, so you can create something. You can have something like perfectly float, essentially, at the Lagrangian point. And there's some cool things that's happened with Lagrangian points. Like, did you read about one of the Apollo rockets actually like was supposed to be sent off into the sun, but it accidentally got caught in our Lagrangian point and like orbited around the sun and then came back into Earth's orbit. Crazy stuff. So it's but it's yeah, I don't know. Does he know enough that it would have? Okay, I'm trying to think about this. If the moon is in orbit at the L2 Lagrangian point, it would appear only at night. Okay. If it wasn't as dense, it could be much larger and visible. That's true. Okay. It doesn't that I could see a system where, the moon only comes out at night in a perfect kind of situation. That's their world. However, it wouldn't necessarily I think that ruins the phases though, doesn't it? Doesn't that mean it's always going to be full? I have to need an astronomer. Damn sexy moon. Oh, congrats on 1 year of streaming. Time flies. Thank you. It's amazing how many things. I think somebody congrats me on also like 1 year of the fanfic, and I was like, oh no, we've hardly gotten anywhere. Damn it. Millions of people starve in capitalist countries. Yeah, it's true. Millions of people starve everywhere. I think we're talking about Hillary, these things, but it's like Iraq War, Libya, like. So, I suppose like they know nothing about. I don't know what we're talking about with like. Do you guys know nothing about Benghazi? Like, oh my god! Like, what right-wing talking points have you been eating to believe that like Hillary had anything to do with Benghazi? Like, what on earth? What on earth are like, this is like so bonkers crazy where I'm just like, what right-wing talking point is someone thinking that like, to even understand, like, do you understand that like in Benghazi was a situation where a terrorist organization attacked a CIA compound, and then the right-wingers decided to somehow claim that Hillary had decreased the amount of funding for like defense in the country of Libya, and therefore like people couldn't defend Benghazi or something. Which, by the way, funding is done by Congress, and Hillary, as Secretary of State, isn't even in the line of orders when it comes to Libya. So the Secretary of State oversees the civil service State Department employees. Meanwhile, policy in country goes through the ambassador straight to the president. The Secretary of State is not in the chain. So when something happens in a foreign country like Libya, that has nothing to do with Hillary. So like and it's not like these Republican lawmakers didn't know this, right? But to like fundamentally not understand like the command structure, the order structure, the management structure of the State Department, because they know that the public doesn't understand that, and to somehow like have Hillary involved with this, and then for someone to say that like Hillary is a warmonger because terrorists attacked a CIA compound in Libya, like what crazy world do you live in? Like it's just so fucking bonkers that now like I've like lost so much like like logical respect for like any argument you're making. Like I just don't even fucking get it. Like what? Libya? Hillary? Libya? What are you fucking talking about? Like what? What? Um it's so bonkers. Like it hurts my brain. It's so dumb. Like it hurts my brain. Okay. Thoughts on YouTuber Hills Alive? Like I don't want to be too mean, but like Hillary Libya? Like what? What? So Hills Alive, I've never heard of Hills Alive, but apparently he's done some videos recently on what makes someone a bastard. I mean, I suppose it's a pretty big theoretical question, but it's just like I think like only 60% or 40% of people in Sweden, for example, are born in wedlock, so it's kind of silly. Like what? Like I'm like Swagger Dagger. I understand I'm way behind here, but it's like Swagger Dagger. Like this is some of the dumbest shit I've ever heard. Like I don't even know if I can like. Oh my god! Like how essentially solely responsible for Libya? Like what are you talking about? Like what are you talking about? Like like this is so like fundamentally bad. Like you have no idea what you're talking about here. Okay, none. Like none. The Secretary of State doesn't even oversee the ambassador. Like it's so stupid. Like she's the manager of the civil employees. And it's not even State Department. Like I mean, the ambassador is Christopher Stevens, but he's chief of mission in a country, but he went to visit a CIA compound. Like, it's not even the State Department. Like, it's not even the State Department. And if it were the State Department, she's not even in that management. She's not even in that management. God. Oh God. Oh my God. Oh my God. Oh my God. All right. Can Night's Watch men have sex or is it just not marriage, like Sam said? They're not. I guess it's not part of their vows and they all go to Molestown. But John seems to think that it's more than that. But it's that's an odd one, right? Like, because John definitely thinks he literally believes he broke his vows by having sex with Ygritte. He thinks this in his head, but we all know the Night's Watch vows. It says take no wife, and everybody's going to Molestown. So, I mean, maybe there's some like legalistic extra stuff that like somebody's written down or something on top of that. But you're right that there's a little bit of a contradiction there. Like we know the Night's Watch vows, it's take no wife. And maybe I guess John's just an idiot. That's but I guess John's just an idiot. That's the only thing that's the only explanation I really have, unless there's like some extra book and bylaws like of what defines marriage. Yeah. Let's see here. Preston, you should read Conscious of a Conservative by Barry Goldwater. It's a very good book, my friend. You should reject socialism, full stop. Again, the term doesn't mean anything. So I'm both a socialist and not a socialist, I guess. So I just like telling me specifically, like you have to be specific, like what things am I against or for? Like, am I for or against a worker owning means of production or not owning means of production? Like, I don't, I don't, I'm not against like it either way. Like, you'd have to be more specific in what it is that I'm for or against. You can't, like, if you're going to say to me like socialism, I mean, like that's, you know, what is what I don't know, you know, like yeah, it just doesn't mean anything. I was busy watching TV show. Watch it. Watch it. Great TV, man. Oh, you. I haven't seen it. No, I haven't seen it. Let's see. Man, I'm way behind on things. I guess when you should read more Milton Friedman. Great writings. Well, Milton Friedman has had his problems too, as I mean, as a monetarist, but he kind of led the way for rational expectations, which has some problems. I mean, reading Milton Friedman, dude, like, like, I have a degree in economics from the University of Chicago. You think I haven't fucking read Milton Friedman? Like, think the comet Vulcan will return in A Song of Ice and Fire? I think it's just too far. I mean, it's a comet, right? I mean, I don't know many comets that come back in only like 2 years. I mean, maybe it hit some sort of Lagrangian point and went on a weird circuitous. I think I've been broken by the comments today. Like I'm all fucking crazy. This is what happens when Carmine's not around to keep me in check. Just, the comet hit this Lagrangian point, went around the moon, came back. But no, I mean, it's a comet. You think of those things having like hundreds or thousands. Well, at least Halley's comet has like 75 years, right? You think something a little larger than just like it's only been a little over a year since the comet came. So I don't know if it's gonna make it back. Maybe there could be like a flash forward epilogue or something, and the comet could appear again. Maybe that would be a dream of spring. Best 90s action star, Arnold Stallone. I went with Van Damme, followed by Bruce Willis and Jackie Chan. Use any metric you want. So the action star has the ability to kind of make like to be empty, like to be the bathroom sign, where you kind of say, oh, he's like the hero. He's just, and each of these stars like does have their own little different take on how they do it. Bruce Willis's whole thing was he came off as the everyman. Well, Jackie Chan like came off on the like I'm suffering so much kind of thing. Van Damme was like almost a scrappy underdog because he's small. Well, Stallone was just like the mammoth, right? I'm going to be a little different, and I'm going to actually say that I think the best action star in the 90s was Keanu. I actually think that he was just more he more represented the everyman that allowed people to like watch his movies and think like, oh, that's me, when I actually think of abilities though, like isn't Jet Li like much better at like fighting than the rest of them? Isn't Jet like I think I'm more amazed by Jet Li stuff, to be honest, but that's really like so if I'm going by like who I identify with, I think I'm going to go with Keanu. But if I'm actually going to go with like who when I watched them, I was just like, oh my god, they're fucking incredible. I think I'm going to go with Jet Li. Robb executed Rickard Karstark. Why not send him to the wall after the war? Wouldn't Robb be able to command the Karstark army? Oh. Hello, back again. How's it going?
I'm sorry. Every time I see Tom, I just on the big screen. I don't know.
It's a good joke. You just keep it going. Keep it going.
Anyway, what's happening? Have we talked about Robb's will yet?
What was at the very beginning, man?
I wasn't here. I'm sorry. I've been so preoccupied with other crap going on. I'm so sorry. I asked Phil if he wanted to come on, but I think he's busy, and so is Trey and everybody else. What's the topic? Yeah. What are we on?
We're talking about Robb executing Rickard Karstark, and wouldn't it have been smarter for him to send him to the wall? Yeah, but Robb's a fucking idiot. I think he quickly needed to send a message to. I think he did it in order to. Wasn't there something about him being frightened for like the lives of Sansa, or something? He needed to send a message that this wasn't, like acceptable behavior or something like that. I think that might have been his mentality. I have to look it up again. But yeah, it was a really dumb move, and but would the Karstarks leave him if he sent him to the wall too? Maybe. How does he get him to the wall? And he's got to send him to Seaguard, and had him go by boat or something to Shadow. It'd be a tougher thing. But I think it was. I have to go back, or maybe it was just the honor thing. He's just so wrapped up.
Didn't Robb do it because he thought that's what Ned would have done, since Karstark was essentially a traitor by killing innocent children, and he couldn't just send him to the wall because, like, you're gonna send up like a sizable escort. The Karstark men and forces will intercept. Like you would essentially have to pass through Karstark lands, kinda, to get to the wall, unless you deviate to another like area. But then that would just take more time, and you're sending a sizable host, so they have to come back eventually. It's like a whole thing.
Yeah.
You keep him as a hostage. That complicates things.
Preston, my dad is spending his entire life savings on Tesla stock, 140,000 with no other savings. Please explain to him why not to do this. Love you. Well, this is what we want to diversify our assets to ameliorate risk and return. So like, okay, we don't want to get into the economics of it all. So like, if we accept rational expectations, okay, then the price of something is the price of something. Okay. And so nothing under rational expectations, nothing's overvalued. But then people are like, well, what about like stocks that go up and down? Don't those values change? And it's like, yes, but that would be fundamentally a function of risk and return at that point. So that, yes, that stock might go up, but everybody involved in the pricing of that stock is speculating about the future, and they understand like risk and return. And at the end of the day, the risk and return are probably going to balance out. Rational expectations, people actually think you can't really make money on the stock market, but because everything is equally priced, and you're always going to balance your risk and return, so everything's going to, so now in a practical sense, most people that deal with stocks and portfolios and such say, okay, well, yes, like things are a function of risk and return, but there's still a slight profit on everything. So if you diversify and put your stuff in lots of pots of money, when one goes down, you've got the other 9 that are still going forward, and you're not thrown out. So it's not that, your dad might make a lot of money and he might lose it all, and there's a risk and return on that. You just and I would say, like, for me, that's an uncomfortable amount of risk. For most people, that's an uncomfortable amount of risk to put everything in one stock. That is, that's betting the farm, and it's very, very dangerous. You want to diversify your assets, and keep in mind everybody else. Like, you to be confident or arrogant enough to believe that, like, the inside, like, compared to everybody else. Keep in mind everybody else in the market thinks they know what's best too, and they're all measuring the same. They're all making these same decisions. So it's are you really smarter than all the other thousands, millions of people that are investing? It's it's in determining whether a stock is overvalued or undervalued. It's kind of a coin toss, whether a stock is overvalued or undervalued. So, and if it's going to go up or down. So, I would say, please diversify your assets. Diversify your assets. She did laugh about Gaddafi being raped. I don't. I've never heard that or seen that. Sounds like an urban legend. But even if it were true, we're talking to Hillary, I think. People laugh at all sorts of reasons. Laughter is how we deal with uncomfortable things that don't make sense in our mind. So you can't really take a laughter as meaning anything. People laugh at all sorts of crazy stuff. People laugh.
Preston, like, stop. Like, you do this all the time. The fact that Hillary laughed at Gaddafi, a horrible human being, getting raped, that automatically means she shouldn't be president. Automatically. What are you doing? Stop it.
Wait, ambassadors don't report to the Secretary of State? No. Ambassadors do not report to the Secretary of State. Yeah. They report directly to the president. That's how it works. That's why the entire the entire Benghazi thing was like the most ridiculous thing. Like how so what it wasn't even a State Department compound, it was a CIA compound, but the ambassador Christopher Stevens went to visit it, and then it got attacked and Christopher Stevens died. And it's like, people are like, well, how is he allowed to go? Well, he's the ambassador. He can do whatever he wants. Doesn't he answer to somebody? Yeah, he answers to the president. The president tells him not to go, but no, that's it. So I don't get. America isn't intensely responsible for instability in Libya. I don't know. I'm not saying America is I don't know if America isn't involved in Libya affairs. Of course they are, but instability, who's to say? Who's to say if what they do doesn't create more stability or less stability? But what I can say is that what was going on with U.S. and Libya policy was after the 80s, where there was a nightclub bombing in West Berlin that was linked back to the Libyans, and then another airplane stuff. There was a few terrorist attacks that were linked back to Libya, and so we put on heavy sanctions on Libya, and then slowly but surely Gaddafi over time started playing ball and was getting warmer to America, and decades of diplomacy was slowly opening Libya up, and then the Iraq War happened, where the neocons thought that this would the fear of invasion would bring about would make the dictators a little more pro-American, and it actually did work. Gaddafi was actually no, I'm up for anything. You want inspectors to come in? There's nothing going on in Libya. He actually became even more kind of pro-American. After the Iraq invasion, it was the one place where the Bush policy was actually kind of working. And then the Arab Spring happened, which Gaddafi was always fighting different tribes in his country. Mainly there's these tribe people around Mizrat, we call them Mizratans, and they eventually took over the country. The Mizratans now rule, but I'm sure, I'm sure the U.S. was funding certain tribes and not other tribes or whatever. But um, I don't I don't know if I really blame instability in Libya on the United States. Uh, it's just the he was he was eventually overthrown by religious extremists, and so I don't and different tribes that were just not aligned with him. So I don't know. I don't get it. Um, so I don't know if like you can blame America for a lot of shit. Like, don't get me wrong, but Libya, I mean, come on. Like, I don't get it. Like, find something else. There's so much shit to blame America for. Environmental destruction, Afghanistan, Iraq, Israel. Like, there's so much shit. So much shit. Why would you pick Libya? Like, Libya? Libya? um let's see here. The State Department is in charge of embassies. Yeah, the State Department is in charge of embassies, not the Secretary of State. Okay? That's the State Department is not the Secretary of State. They are two different entities. So when you're in country, you have someone called a chief of mission, and they are in charge of America's mission within a country. That person is usually the ambassador, but if there's not an ambassador, that person can be a charge, a DCM, while the Secretary of State is the head of the civil service in Washington, D.C. That's all part of the State Department. The State Department is funded in two different funding streams. It has a foreign funding stream and a civil funding stream. And that's, I know it's wacky because you're like, wait, isn't there one person at the top? Isn't it a pyramid? No. Sorry. Also, keep in mind that as chief of mission, you have oversight over other departments within your country. So, like, unless there's a status of forces agreement, chief of mission is over DOD, it's over DOT, over Homeland Security, whoever, FBI, whoever might also be in the country is all still part at the mission. They have offices at the embassy often. And so, the person in charge there is the chief of mission, the ambassador usually, not the Secretary of State. Secretary of State is in charge of what's in DC. Now, if you want to get to like a very roundabout like kind of systems, like, there are regional bureaus in DC that have overarching regional policies that in a roundabout way might influence like an embassy, but no, it's not stuff like this. She lied in front of Congress. When, who, what, when did she lie in front of Congress? What absolute idiocy. This is how Trump, see, Carmen, this is why Trump won, is that people just believe shit. Like, they're just told shit. Like, are you?
What are you talking? What, Hillary?
Yeah, like it's just
Preston. We've had this discussion multiple times. The emails. That's why she can't be president. Emails. Benghazi. Also, you forgot that's actually not the real Hillary. She's a clone.
That's true. She's a lizard person, right? This. Oh my god.
I was gonna go with yes. Sure, whatever.
Let's see. Is the Mad Mouse Howland Reed? I think the Mad Mouse seems a little bit. Well, Howland Reed is probably in his 30s. We don't. Could the Mad Mouse be Howland Reed? I don't know. I mean, I don't know why the Mad Mouse would be taking money from Varys, or is he just lying about that? Why he just happens to be hanging out in the Riverlands to meet Brienne? why he shows up to to the Vale. Like if this dude is totally into like sending his children off on prophetic missions, like is he giving a shit about Sansa Stark? I don't know. It doesn't
Hold on,
seem to
hold on, hold
be
on,
doesn't seem to
hold on.
be
I
of
gotta
his.
stop you right there.
What's that?
This is a great comment from the guy with the the guy goes, "Dude, you don't even believe in God. Why should we even listen to you about anything you say or stick with the Song of Ice and Fire?" I don't know if this dude's trolling. Like it's the same guy. I don't know if this dude's trolling or like, I don't know.
I
Bro.
mean, he must be, right? I
Green
mean,
Ray, very green.
our moon is black on the backside. Maybe there's spins, collision, maybe. Yeah, that's the thing is, I think if the moon is, so this is the whole thing of like why in Ice and Fire is the moon in weird positions at certain crescents and why is there a new moon in the sky and that's half of the moon is painted black in Ice and Fire seems to be our explanation. Um, maybe like soot of some sort hit the side of the moon. Oh, somebody put Commando being the best movie in '86. By the way, I don't Commando. I've never
It
really
has the
been a
best
fan.
one-liners.
It's a ridiculous movie, and if you take it as
It's great.
comedy, it's pretty funny. But it's also
It's
like I
great.
don't know how many people take it as comedy. Like the anti-gay stuff and like the
Anti-gay? What? Where? Really? I didn't notice it. I just thought it was fucking hilarious. There's one scene that's my favorite. They're on the airplane. He kills the guy, and then he tells the stewardess, "Don't wake up my friend. He's dead tired." I fucking love that. I just come on. It's great. It's great.
Oh my
Remember when I
gosh.
said
I
I kill
mean, you
you
actually think
last?
of the
That's right,
horror,
bro. You did. I lied. Blah, blah, blah.
the horror
Blah,
that
blah,
he's gonna
blah.
like that poor airline attendant is going to have to deal with later. Like, oh my gosh,
Are you really thinking
that
about
guy
this
murdered a
fucking guy?
man.
This fucking guy.
Um, so in Robb's will, if the purpose was to cut out Sansa and making Cat heir, sort of doesn't that sort of solve the problem because Sansa still is in line since she's Cat's daughter. John being heir cuts Sansa um, out better. Um, yeah, but then it would be Cat's choice. If the monarch can just disinherit, like it can just be Cat's choice after that. Um, this is another problem: is that like someone could easily be like, well, John's on the Night's Watch, so he doesn't count, so Sansa's heir. Like there's still that situation. Um, so it'd be kind of ridiculous just in the sense of like, oh, I have to respect your disinheritment. Is that a word? I'm not going to respect you disinheriting her. So uh, I don't know if there's in a practical sense, like I say, like all the choices are pretty bad. Um, there's no good choice for Robb's heir to keep everybody together. Robb's literally the only person in the world that can rule both the North and the Riverlands. And even he kind of sucks. I mean, he's a 16-year-old boy that makes some really bad decisions. Really bad decisions. um, um, Matrix was 2001. Wasn't Matrix 99?
It
Yeah,
was
Matrix was
99.
1999. I knew that. Plus, you had Speed before that. Keanu Reeves. This is Keanu. Yeah, I'm way back in discussions, but no, yeah. But yeah, come on. Let's see. Can Barristan Victorian point of view be voiced in Chad? Nah, I'm not going to do that. That'd be too hard. That'd be too hard to do a voice the entire time. Um, that'd be too difficult. Oh, Carmine, your channel guys, the first one that got me into theories. You guys have come a long way, and I'm glad to see how far you've come. Thank you
You
very
see,
much.
I know he's lying. I know he's lying because I don't do theories. So, but thank you for the compliment anyway.
I even remember, so when we first started, one of the first videos I watched of Carmine's was Carmine actually
Don't do
saying,
this. Don't
I
do this.
don't
Don't do this
like
right now.
theories.
Oh my god, here we go. Don't do this.
What? Like,
Alright,
you're
fine.
saying the same thing. I don't get it.
Okay. No, I'm saying I don't do them. But all right, go ahead.
But I remember you making a video saying, like, yeah, unless it's like a super big theory, like I don't really like think about them and don't really subscribe to them. Like you're like maybe R plus A equals J and maybe Frey pies, but come on, like that's just not what I'm interested in. And I remember you made this video where you said that, and I was like,
So
okay.
lame. So glad I'm gonna be very honest. Like my first fucking videos, like you're immune to this. Maybe it's because you're older and more mature and not a shithead like I was back in the day. But like back in the day, like you once you start getting like more subs and people like seeing your stuff and a lot of subscribers and the money starts rolling in and everyone's sucking your dick in the comment section, you do get kind of a big head. And I look back on that stuff and I cringe. Like, why would I even say that? It's so fucking dumb. I even took pot shots at you and like other YouTubers. I was so fucking stupid back then, and it's so cringe to even think about. That's why I always get like so.
But that's just life in general. Like, I mean, we all look back at our previous selves and like cringe because that's the whole thing about like human growth and becoming a better person and being on a path. Of course you should. I mean, if you look back on your previous self and you're like, oh man, I was awesome. That means you haven't done any growing in like 10 years. Like,
Yeah.
come on. So like you're supposed
I was
to.
like 23 too. It was
Yeah,
so fucking
you're
so
supposed
lame,
to you're supposed to think
so
about that.
cringe.
But back in the day, like, I mean, you me and Tony Teflon,
Tony
man.
Teflon.
Tony
Mm-hmm.
Teflon, yeah. So we're still going
Oh,
strong.
Josh reminded me. Carmine won the Colitis challenge on the made-up theories. Explain that. I don't know. Like,
It's
I don't
true.
know.
It's true. Did I come in last?
I have to. I don't remember.
I mean, to be fair, the difference between the first and last was like two answers, but like it was.
Colitis goes somehow to something no one expected. Carmine won this. I'm like, yay, yay.
Oh, with the Vale army in the Riverlands, will the Sunderlands invade it for Aegon? Would the clansmen side with them? Minor Royces, Squisher rumors. I mean, I think definitely the idea that I have in my mind is that you're gonna have this Vale army kind of sweep in, but there's gonna be factions within it who are gonna want different things. And yeah, like having these Sunderlands who are big Blackfire supporters, like think that maybe Aegon is a Blackfire, or maybe they should just follow him because he's like, he has the sword or something. And they're on Sweet Robin's Kingsguard. Like, this creates conflicts and things like that. So I just think that sort of thing is probably going to happen. That you're going to have more division, and stuff like that, rather than everybody coming together. If only they could all come together to fight the others. But it doesn't ever seem to be that way, right? It just seems like. But I mean, it's got to be an issue. I mean, if Harrenhal is declaring for Aegon, which they've got some issues to work out. Who knows? Or maybe Sweet Robin will join Aegon. We'll have to see. We'll have to see. Or maybe he's gonna marry. Maybe Sweet Robin's gonna marry Danny, which I think is just would be some of the coolest scenes ever. Don't you think? Like Danny arriving and treating with Sweet Robin, having to marry Sweet Robin. What do you think, Carmine? Oh, he's gone. He went somewhere else.
I'm sorry. What was the question?
Oh, do you think that it would be a pretty funny chapter to have Danny decide that she needs to marry Sweet Robin to get to pull the veil in?
Oh my god, oh, that only in your fan fiction would that happen. I can't
But
see
it's
that
so
happening.
funny,
But I would
right?
love
It's
it.
just such the most ridiculously
Yeah,
like awkward situation.
I would love for that to be a conversation, though. That definitely needs to be a conversation in the fanfic. Like
Yeah,
when Danny does eventually come over, when she's planning the list of suitors that she could marry to secure allies. Yeah, I could see that being a thing.
yeah, yeah. At least, at minimum, a very funny conversation. But there is the issue of the Klansmen. Like, what are we going to do with the Klansmen? Um, um, I received a fairly long email from someone about logistics of travel and how ridiculous it would be for them to be, and how long it would take to get all the forces to come together in the Vale and then go down the road um, by land, and how much easier it would be for them to go by sea. Um, which I'm pretty convinced by, but that does change, like, what do you do with the mountain clans? Like, are the mountain clans then, like, is the Vale just left vulnerable to the mountain clans now that all the Vale forces have left to go fight a war in the Riverlands, and you have essentially the Ironborn situation, but with the mountain clans, So, um, if you could choose to have George R. R. Martin and the fanfic each add one new point of view to the series, who would you pick, and why is it Gatehouse Amy? Gatehouse Amy would not be a bad point of view. She would be a really fun point of view. Um, she just because she's ridiculous and you get to hear about all of her sex adventures. But the I'm trying to think of, like, who would be beneficial as a point of view. And I would think that I would pick someone in the Reach just because we need more eyes there. Or, the Riverlands isn't a bad situation, or Westerlands probably would be a better Westerlands, or the Reach would be a better situation for a point of view. So I'd probably go with. I think the most useful new point of view would be a Maester, just so then you could constantly talk about, like, what the Citadel is thinking and doing, and the messages and stuff like that. I think that would be functionally the most useful. But I think having a Riverlander or a Reacher, like a a Willis Tyrell would be very useful to have, or something like that. Or, yeah, I don't know. What would be crazy? Crazy would be like a Green Man. Green Man point of view.
Ramsey. I've always wanted Ramsey or Joffrey back when that was possible, but Ramsey. You guys need to do some. I wish you guys would do like some evil characters that are like
Yeah.
There's no redemption for them.
You weren't here earlier, but we were talking, like, early in the stream. We were talking about this crazy but kind of established in George R. R. Martin lore about that the Green Men with their antlers, those antlers are actually weirwood branches, and that they, like, stuck them on their head in order to, like, bond with their weirwood, to have, like, connections with the weirwoods.
That's interesting.
I know, but it's actually, like, completely kind of is what happened in A Song for Leah. So it's, like, not so crazy, even though it sounds crazy. Like, those are pieces of weirwood on them. Like, oh, it's very Dune-ish too, right? Like becoming the worm. Um, how is there no black market in Westeros during the war? Uh, well, I mean, we hear about we hear about overpriced horses, and we hear about, I mean, and things going up like that. Um, all prostitution is black market. Um, but I'm trying to think like what other things would people be looking for that um, you know it's for black market. Like I think we would see um, a rise in prices. So I'm just wondering what like is illegal that we're now seeing sold is when I think black market, right? That's something that's not official. And so like prostitution is illegal, but it's still being sold. Like what other things are not supposed to be sold? Slavery is not supposed to be legal, but it's happening. The so yeah, so I don't know. I mean, so I mean there is black market, but I'm not sure what items should be thinking of that should be appearing that aren't there. Um, this person's got me. What's a neocon, Preston? Is that word okay? You're right that neocon does mean a lot of different things to different people, but um, neocon specifically, I was thinking about like um, um, Bush, the Bush conservative ideology that there would be a transformation of the Middle East and a birth of democracy from intervention there. That's what I really kind of like was saying with that specifically. But yes, you got me on that. Oh, where am I? Where am I? What about instances where the Seven might actually have power? The visions Catalan has in the Sept, the Quiet Isle Healer. Um, Anything in the Seven, and how might it work in the cosmology? Mm. This is a funny question where um, there are a lot of fans that believe that like beyond like the old gods being real physical things in the world, like some people do believe that like R'hllor or the drowned god are actual beings that might have power in the world. Um, and they believe this because Melisandre seems to have powers, and so they're kind of in almost a D&D sense, like not Dave and Dan, but Dungeons and Dragons sense, like um, they're receiving powers from their god and are able to cast spells. No different than like a wizard that taps into the ether to get their power to cast spells. They're tapping into a god who allows them to cast spells. Um, the and but those same fans are like, well, I guess the Faith of the Seven doesn't have anything, like they're not real gods. But could there be? I mean, we do see people that follow the Faith of the Seven having supernatural things occurred with them. Most notably like Lancel receiving visions and things like this. So, but you could, but once you kind of take the step and go, well, they think those are from the seven-faced god, but it's clearly not. It's clearly from like time traveling Bran or the Werewood Net. And once you kind of make that jump, then you're like, well, why wouldn't R'hllor stuff be that, or the drowned god stuff be from that too? And so in the end, like everything kind of like goes back to time traveling Bran as like the ultimate source of all power. The one ring that rules them all. But and so yeah, people have these visions, but visions can come from anywhere. They can come from glass candles. They can come from um, flames. They can come from werewood visions and stuff like that. They can come from wolves, So the problem is that we've got so many other sources that it doesn't take me to believing that there's going to be a deity. Because George R. R. Martin has never, well, I mean, in his very, very early like high school stuff, he's got some gods, but I don't think he's ever had a story that actually has like a literal god, like powerful being, like a Zeus kind of character in it, or even a Christian sky god omnipotent thing in it. He has like hive-minded aliens, but he has never had a god, except for his like early stuff, like Are You Afraid of the Dark, or that kind of those stories. Is it not Are You Afraid of the Dark? It's Only Children Are Scared of the Dark. I think that was the story. Not Are You Scared of the Dark? That was the Nickelodeon show, right? The one that Carmine watched.
No.
You didn't watch Are You Afraid of... This seems like you'd be up your alley, like Goosebumps. Are You Afraid of the Dark?
I watched and read Goosebumps. It was my favorite. But Are You Afraid of the Dark? No, I didn't see that one.
What would be your reaction if Ned did a Loris and killed some of his friends at the Tower of Joy? Oh. That would be pretty cool. Like Ned goes in there. In fact, like all 7 of them like survived, and he gets up to the top and he's like, "No!" Starts going. That would be pretty funny. I mean, we need something dark. We need something dark with Ned. And I think in the fanfic, something dark with Ned is definitely going to happen. Like, we're definitely going to hear a dark story about Ned with Starfall. Because, I think what's going to happen is there's some stories that are going to be told by Darkstar about, and then there's a question of whether Aaron should move to Starfall as a character, moving people in different directions. But so that might be it. But thank you, Royce 101. Who is Tony Teflon? Tony Teflon, he's still doing stuff today. He's just another Ice and Fire YouTuber. He's just been doing it for a long time. He's he's kind of had like a nice steady amount of users and fans, and he does live streams with Phil the Issues guy. So you've Carmine, you've talked to Tony, right? I've never actually had a conversation with him.
Yes, I've spoken to Tony multiple times. He's the OG. It was you, me, him, and maybe one other person that started like back in 2014. And no, he's just moved on to like TV shows like Dexter, The Revival, and
he still talks about
the name escapes me.
Ice and Fire, but yeah, he talks about other shows, yeah. But yeah, he's just been doing things for a while. Oh yeah, you posted here. He OG creator. Oh man, this is turbo late, but it had me thinking that if werewood branches on the head are made into a crown, Sansa could be wearing a werewood crown. Ooh, interesting. Interesting ideas. Yeah, no, me and Carmine have never done collabs with him, but yeah, Phil the Issues guy has. People are like, I remember Tony Teflon. He's still here. He's still here. OG. Which character is Sweet Robin's ass man counterpart? What is that? What do you think that means?
I have no fucking idea. Ass man, what?
Ass man. Yeah, no prohibition, no black market. Yeah, this is the idea. Black market lemons for Lemongate. But you'd have to first have a law saying like no lemons. I think there's just no lemons around. Yeah, slave trading is illegal, but you start seeing, I guess, the Ironborn started doing it again, and stuff like that. All right, let's be real. Hillary is a war hawk. She's been pro getting into the war in Iraq, Syria, and Ukraine. Yes, every established politician in the last 20 years is a war hawk. That doesn't mean she's not. I don't see anything. I mean, she voted for the Iraq war, but you got to remember that, like, we all remember America at that time if you were here, okay? And every Democrat did that. I mean, this is why, like, I was super into Howard Dean at the time, because Howard Dean was the first one to be like, no, this is fucking stupid. Like, I loved fucking Howard Dean. Okay. So don't get me, wrong. Like, it's just that she played it safe. She's a New York senator. She's going to do that. So, because just like Bernie is pro gun because he's from Vermont. Okay. People do stupid crap because they represent what they represent. Now, the other stuff, Syria and Ukraine, I don't know where you're getting this. Like, first of all, Hillary's not a person, like, she's not a politician anymore. So she has nothing to do with Ukraine. As for Syria, no. There was, like, I know specifically, like, what her positions were, and there was nothing about getting into war in Syria. We're in war in Syria, okay? There's no getting in. Like, we've been involved in Syria for decades, okay? We're part of Syria, but there's nothing that she said that was pro-war versus, like, somebody else. Like, her big policy thing that was different from others was that she wanted to create a no-fly zone in northern Syria. This was her idea. Which, yeah, I was totally for. Like, now some people are like, oh, but then Russia would violate it and then we'd be going into war. What happened instead was when Trump was elected, immediately after Trump was elected, the Russians went in and bombed the U.S. allied forces in northwestern Syria. And they were killed. They all died. It was really, really sad. And so when you talk about, like, Syria specifically, I'm like that, like, it's really fucking sad that Hillary wasn't elected for Syria. All right. It makes me angry that, like, Trump, like, allowed Russia to murder everyone in Syria. Like, and destroy everything in the Northwest. It's just like, now keep in mind, like, politically, like, I'm probably more aligned with forces in the northeast of Syria. Like, but the U.S. had aligned itself with Northwest forces. Hillary wanted a no-fly zone over them. Trump didn't. He got elected. Russians bombed them all. And they all died. So to say that, like, Hillary is pro-war with Syria and Ukraine, you're just, like, throwing things out there, hoping that, like, the person you're talking about to doesn't know what they're talking about and doesn't know the situation. But this is fucking me. Like, you're not going to fucking, like, trump me on this. Like, you're not going to fucking, like, know more about this issue than me. Like, not to be arrogant here, but like you think you can just, like, dabble in something and somehow be like, no, let me tell you about Syria. Oh, fucking really? You're going to tell me about Syria? Like, come on. You just threw that out there because you don't know what's going on and you don't know her positions and you don't know what's going on in Syria, hoping that, like it would stick because you heard it through a grapevine from some other person that doesn't know what they're fucking talking about. Like, all this fucking Libya talk, like this Libya stuff. Hillary and Libya. Like the minute people say stuff like that, I'm like, you have no idea what you're talking about. Like, none. Like, you don't even understand the structure of the State Department, or, like, where funding was, or what the people were doing in Benghazi. Like, it's just like, it doesn't make any sense to me. Like, which is why, like, you always find these comments are super general, because, like, if it were really specific, if they really had a problem, what Hillary did that was wrong, it was this. It's never that. It's, well, her emails. Like, you have to go general because you can't go specific. And you know that. You know that. That's why you're going general. Uh, I mean, depending on your definition of warhawk, sure. If it's a politician with a vagina, it must be a fucking warhawk. You know, um, it's just I mean, granted, like I get that these comments, like you can't fit that much in, but I never get anything specific. It's always these super general, like, oh, which is why, like, we're getting back to like these terms, like these super general terms. Oh, well, I don't like somebody because they're a fucking, neoliberal. Like, what does that even mean? Oh, her policies with this country. Which policies? Like, what did she do? Like, no one can ever do that. No one can ever be like, well, let's get our finger on it. Like, this is like Carmine's been going around asking people to define woke, and he's like, no one can do it. Like, because you can't do it. Because you can't. Because the minute you start knowing about these issues and how complicated they are and the specific policies, like you realize, like, actually, like, I can't say one thing one way or the other. Like, it's only when you know nothing about something can you be general. Like, do that with anything. Be like, go up to a physicist, like a real physicist, and be like, well, do you think dark matter exists or not? All right, you're not going to get a straight answer. They're going to be like, well, evidence for dark matter. But then again, the standard model with the lambda, and then they're never going to give you a state. They're not going to be like, dark matter doesn't exist or dark matter 100% exists. Like, no expert in anything will ever go to some huge extreme. They're always going to be like, which is why, like, you have to be in, like, only when you know nothing can you be like, well, like a neoliberals. Y'all can't get enough of Hillary. This is the thing. This all gets back to, like, why, like, it all roots in the sexism. Like, why does Hillary get people's, like, blood boiling? There's no reason. She's no different from any other politician, really. Like,
I think I know why.
Because she's a woman.
I think I know why. She reminds a lot of these guys of that one woman in their childhood that really, like, put them in their place, and they've been
Their
angry
mom?
ever since. Mom, aunt, maybe a nun if they went to cat. Like, you know what I'm saying?
But it's like, and you see it, like, everyone becoming now obsessed with AOC. Like, well, Hillary's not Hillary retired. She's walking her dog in the woods. They're still fucking talking about her. We're still, how much we fucking dedicated 2 hours apparently to the fucking Hillary stream. Robb's will, the Hillary stream. But, like, you see it all going to AOC, this random, super unpowerful representative, from the Bronx. Like she's a nobody. And yet everybody's like, oh, AOC, as if, like, and it's because she's a woman. That's it. Like, it's just that's all it boils down to. She's a woman. It's like, I can't call her a bitch, so I'm gonna call her a warhawk. If I call her a bitch, everyone's gonna think I'm sexist. I guess she's a warhawk. I don't like her because of Libya. Because if I call her a bitch, I'm outed. Jesus Christ. What are dead things in the water? I mean, the assumption is, right, that they're others, right? But not others, but whites, right? Can whites swim? I'm trying to think any reason why that, like, white couldn't swim. Right? Because it's not like they're movie zombies, right? So it's just I guess they have to be others, but this is the tree. The trees' faces are growing, not carved. Oh, well, that's a much more interesting idea too. That no one carves the werewood faces; that they're actually, like, the werewood chooses to grow out. That'd be interesting. Well, I guess we do see people put faces in the trees. They're not werewoods, but in the trees south of the wall. So people do that shit, but I don't know. What's Bronn, his men, and his castle doing in the winds of winter? I fundamentally think that Bronn is a Varys supporter. So I think it's very important that Stokeworth and Rosby are controlled by Aegon supporters before his invasion. I think like them coming over and doing that is important. So I think Bronn's joining the Aegon cause personally. I have a long thing about like why I think Bronn is Varys and why and why he brought Shay and things like this. But that's just that's another long story. All right, I got to go pretty soon. The Mad Mouse is described as being tall as a boy, but with an old face and eyes. The men of the neck are short. And wouldn't Ned's best mate be looking for his daughter? And he has red hair, and George R. Martin and red hair. It's true, but Howland Reed has already just fucking sucked as Ned's best mate. I mean, we've already went over Howland Reed being an absolute dick. Like I'm not gonna help your son Robb. He could die. He could die in a shallow grave or just be dumped into a river. But I'm gonna save your daughter. But all right, Swagger Dagger, you earned it. You are banned. Bye. There we go.
Why? What did he do?
You read his comment here?
No, I didn't. What was he doing? Was he saying the N-word? What was he doing?
No. He said, it's all rooted in sexism. Holy shit, you're a fucking moron. There we go. Bye-bye. You see, I mean, to think that there's not sexism against Hillary, like what world do you live in? Like everyone knows there's sexism.
After Hillary, I don't know if you noticed this. This is something I noticed, and it was very poignant. So after Hillary lost the 2016 election, ironically, they needed someone else to jump on. For a couple of weeks, I don't know if you noticed this, but it was Elon Musk. Everyone was jumping on it. I'll try to find the articles. And ironically, Elon Musk is now like full right-winger, like far right-winger. Yeah. Did you see him trying to like defend the Q Shaman guy?
Oh yeah, he's defending Q Shaman. I mean, he told everybody specifically to vote Republican in the last election. I mean, there's no hiding it. There's no like maybe on that. Like he's just like a Republican. Mm-hmm. Like he defended the Dilbert racist dude. Lot of stuff. A lot of stuff.
Yeah, that's fucking Dilbert.
Yeah, I know. How much money does this become the King's Killer Chronicle? The author of that like came out and said like he'd been super depressed, right? And that's the reason that the book hasn't been written, and it's probably not going to be written until he deals with his depression, right? So, but yeah, I think that's a big part of it. I think it's very, very similar. It's just the guy that wrote the King's Killer Chronicle is honest about it. And this is my last one because I got to go, guys. The moon door was literally a teleporter to the moon when moons are in line of sight in front of the door. Sky cells become... Oh. I mean, that's interesting that like you could open the door and then you'd have the moon there, and then you could... I don't know, but I mean teleporter versus like transponder or like telepathy like transponder. That'd be interesting. But George did also say like having the moon door in the floor is much cooler. But yeah, it's that's sky cells. Oh, well, you do mean teleporters. Sky cells are incoming bays. I wish I could discuss more, but I have to go. Anyway, thank you, Carmine, for being with me, and I'll talk to you guys soon. Thanks, everybody.